Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at both AWS Web Application Firewall or WAF, as well as AWS Shield. Now, we will cover DDoS mitigation as its own section in the course. It's right at the very end. Shield at the moment, it costs $3,000 to go to the enterprise support level, so we won't be activating that today, but we will have a quick look at it. Before we go into the console though, let's talk about what WAF is. So it's a web application firewall that allows you to monitor HTTP and HTTPS requests that are forwarded to CloudFront or to an application load balancer. It allows you basically to control access to your content, and you can configure conditions such as what IP addresses are allowed to make these requests or what query string parameters need to be passed for the request to be allowed, and then the application load balancer or CloudFront will either allow this content to be received or it will give it a HTTP 403 status code, which is permission denied. So first of all, you might be wondering what query string parameters are. So we've all seen them. Here's an example. So we've got our website. We've got facebook.com/topic/Australia versus Honduras. There's just been a big game in Australia. And / and then just a number for this Facebook article. Then you see how we've got that question mark. Basically, you could take everything to the left of that question mark and just paste it into the browser, and you'll always be able to go and view that page. Everything to the right of the question mark are variables. So right now it's saying source and then is equal to, and then whatever variable that stands for. I have no idea what WHFRT actually is, but that is basically the variable that's being passed back through the browser. We've then got and position equals 1 and TRQID, don't know what that is, but it equals this number here, etc., etc. So we use query string parameters to pass information through web requests. So we can configure conditions inside our WAF so that we only allow people to view our web page if they've got the right query string parameters. If they don't, CloudFront or our application load balancers will say, no, sorry, you're not allowed to view this. So we can use WAF in that way. So at its most basic level, WAF allows 3 different behaviors. We're going to allow all requests except the ones that you specify. We're going to block all requests except the ones that we specify. Or maybe we don't quite know what's happening and we're getting a whole bunch of new web requests and we don't know if we want to allow it or block it. We just kind of want to stay neutral, but we want to monitor it. And in that case, we would go in and count the requests that match the properties that we specify. So it's 3. It's basically allow everything, block everything, or I'm not so sure. Let's just count how many requests are coming in. I'll make up my mind later as to whether or not these are good things or bad things. In terms of what it protects you against, a whole bunch of different things. You can define conditions by using characteristics of web requests such as the following. So you can do it by IP address. You can do it by country that the requests originate from. You can do it in terms of the values in the request header. You could do it in terms of strings that appear in the request. So like I was saying, query strings parameters. You can do it based on the length of the request, like how big is this request. I don't want to send too much information. Maybe they're trying to pull down really, really big files, and I don't want people to do that. We also had the presence of SQL code that's likely to be malicious. This is known as SQL injections. So there's a whole bunch of kids will go out there and get SQL injections that will go and dump databases from like WordPress or from Joomla or something. They'll find a new SQL injection because there's discovered a new vulnerability. They'll paste that into Google. What they'll actually do is go out and look for the vulnerability in Google, find sites that are vulnerable to this, and then go and do the SQL injections. Now, if you are behind a WAF, you can stop that from happening. We can also stop cross-site scripting as well. So we're going to go in and create a WAF using a CloudFormation template that Amazon has kindly provided for us. This will provision a few resources, so it will cost a little bit of money. So if you don't want to do it, you can just watch me do it in the console. Also going to have a quick look at Shield, but we're not really going to go into a lot of depth with Shield in this section of the course because we're going to cover it off in better depth in the DDoS section. Okay, so I'm in the AWS console. I'm going to change my region over to Northern Virginia. This CloudFormation templates only work in Northern Virginia, I believe Ireland, and two other places. I can't quite remember. But if I was you, I'd do it in Northern Virginia. We're going to go down to services, and if we just go down to here, we've got WAF and Shield grouped together. I've always found that a bit odd from a product point of view because they are different things, right? Shield is for DDoS mitigation. WAF is basically at layer 7. It's going to protect you and inspect all your traffic and make you a lot safer. So it seems weird that they group it as one product. Let's have a quick look at Shield. So we've got Shield Standard, which all AWS accounts get. There's no additional cost beyond what you already pay for your AWS WAF and other AWS services. For an additional cost, you can get advanced DDoS protection by activating the Shield Advanced plan. So let's have a quick look at what we get with Shield Advanced. So we are going to get things like automated application layer 7 traffic monitoring. So we'll be monitoring at layer 7, which is the application layer. We get things like access to DDoS mitigation capacity. We get protection against things like layer 3 and 4 attack notifications, as well as attack forensic reports. We also get historical reports. The great thing about it is we have a DDoS response team support. So we have people that we can talk to when we're getting DDoSed. And the really cool thing is cost protection. So if we do get DDoS and we've got the advanced service, we won't be liable for those costs. The only issue is it's $3,000 a month. Now, to big enterprises, that's nothing. It's absolutely worth it. If you're a Fortune 500 company, go ahead and turn this on for your main production account. But if you're a small business like we are, standard is fine. So let's move back over, and you can see all in here. You can go over to incidents and protected resources. Again, you have to be an advanced member in order to see stuff there. Let's move back over to our WAF, but instead of going in and configuring this WAF, what I want to do is I want to go in and configure a CloudFormation template. So let's go over to CloudFormation, and we're going to deploy a WAF environment. So CloudFormation sits here under Management Tools. If you can see that, just click in there. We haven't used CloudFormation yet in this course. You can see I've already got a stack. Oh my God, I got to delete that. It's costing me money. Let me just quickly delete this stack. Okay, so that is being deleted. If you don't have much experience with CloudFormation, basically it's a way of scripting infrastructure. So we have these CloudFormation templates that will go in and just provision a whole bunch of resources for us. Hopefully you do know it. Hopefully you've done the Solutions Architect Associate exam where we do cover it off. Maybe you come here from a Developer Associate. I don't think we cover it in that. Well, let's go ahead and create a stack. We're going to use a stack template from an S3 URL. So we'll click in here. And the URL is this one, and I will have it in the resources section of the course, but it's s3.amazonaws.com/CloudFormation examples /community/common attacks.json. And we'll go ahead and hit next. And sorry, I've got a dot at the end. So if we go ahead and hit next, this will show us our stack parameters. So in here, what are we going to call our stack? Well, I'm going to call it my WAF stack, something as simple as that. And then in here, our web access control list name for common attack protection. So what do you want to call it? And basically, I'm just going to leave it as the default value, so common attack protection. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. In here, we've got our different options. So I will tag this as a key. We'll call it my WAF, just so I can keep track of what resources this stack is provisioning. And in here, we've got our permissions. Do we have an identity access management role that CloudFormation can use? I don't actually have a role, so I'm just going to leave that as default. In here, we can add advanced issues for our stack, like SNS notification, termination protection, rollback on failure, etc., etc. I'm just going to leave everything else as default, and I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And this will be, it's just reviewing everything that we've told it, and we'll go ahead and hit create. Now this can take some time because it is provisioning a whole bunch of different resources, so I'm just going to pause the video. Okay, so that took about 15 minutes. It's now deployed. I deleted my other CloudFront distribution just to keep things simple. If I go over to services, I need to go down to Web Application Firewall and Shield. And in here, I'll be able to see my web application ACLs. Now, right now, for some reason, it's jumped to the filter of Northern Virginia. When you create using this template, we're creating a CloudFront web application firewall. And CloudFront is global, obviously, because CloudFront is all over the world. What the filter is applying right now is the application load balancer for Northern Virginia. So application load balancer WAFs are regional, whereas CloudFront distributions are global. Do remember that going into your exam. So if you can't see anything, click on global, and then it will refresh the page and we'll be able to see our web application control list. If we click in here, we'll be able to see our, an overview of requests. Of course, we haven't been getting anything right now because what we haven't done is taken this web application control list and associated it with any CloudFront distribution. So how do we do that? Well, we go over to rules, and in here we see AWS resources using this web application control list, and we can go in and add associations. So I can click in here and add an association as to my rule. So I'm going to go in and add this association now, and that has now associated my CloudFront distribution with this web application firewall. So in here I can see my 4 different rules. So this is manual block all IP rules. This is common attack protection large body match rule. So this will block requests. This will just basically count how many large requests are coming through. This is going to block, so this is SQL injections rules, and this is to stop cross-site scripting. So this will block, and this will just count the number of requests, and you can see that in here. We can go in and edit a web ACL, so we can actually change the actions. You can see my UI is not very good. Well, we can change from block to allow to count, etc., etc. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel. If we actually go into the rule itself and click on it, we can go in and edit the rule. We can go in here, manual IP block set. If we click on manual IP block set, it will actually take us over here, so IPs, and we can add IP addresses or IP address ranges. So you can have /8, /16, /24, or /32. Let's go in and just test this. I'm going to block my own IP address just because I'm an idiot. So to get my public IP address, I'm just going to go over to whatsmyip.org. So here is my public IP address right now. I'm just going to copy and paste that. Going to paste it in here and add that. And it's got to be a valid CIDR address range, so it's going to be /32 because it's a specific IP address. And then we're going to go ahead and hit add. So this WAF will now block my specific IP address. Let's go ahead and test this. So we'll go over to our S3 bucket, and I'm going to upload an image to it. So I'm in my origin bucket. I'm going to upload an image of the A Cloud Guru logo. Okay, so I'm in my S3 bucket. I'm going to go ahead and hit upload. I'm going to go in and add my files. And in here, I've got a picture of me presenting AWS This Week. If you haven't heard of it, we have a weekly TV show called AWS This Week on YouTube, where we go through all the announcements that AWS have released. So we just want to go in and make this object public, so we'll be able to access it via our CloudFront distribution. So the name of the file is download.jpg. Let's go back over to our CloudFormation or CloudFront distribution. And I'm going to grab the ID or the domain name, and I should just be able to cut and paste this and into my browser. So pasting this into my browser, then it's /download.jpeg. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And it says the request could not be satisfied. The request has been blocked, and this is generated by CloudFront. Now, just to test that this is actually working and it's not some other error, let's go ahead and remove my IP address. So I'm back in the rules under AWS WAF. Let's go in and go to our manual IP block set. You could just click in here as well. And then I'm going to go in on this one and delete the IP address range, and that deletes the IP address range. And now I'm just going to go back over to my browser. I'm going to hit F5 or refresh. Can take a while. Now, one thing to bear in mind if you are getting an error message, what can happen is that when you associate your CloudFront distribution with your web application firewall, it actually redeploys the distribution. So it can take about 15 or 20 minutes before it's actually active. You can go into CloudFront and check that out. As soon as it says deployed, you should be able to access it. So I'm going to hit refresh again. And there we go. So there I am running running the AWS This Week show. So let's go through and delete the stack, and then we'll cover off what we've learned. To delete my stack, I just go down to my management tools and go down to CloudFormation and click on in there. just click on the stack and go ahead and hit actions and then go delete stack, and that will delete not just the stack but all the resources underneath. It can take a little bit of time. You also probably want to decommission your CloudFront distribution because they can be expensive. So again, just go back over to CloudFront, and in CloudFront you have to go in and disable it, and then you'll be able to delete it. Disabling again takes about 15 minutes. Everything with CloudFront is about a 15-minute wait because CloudFront is global. So let's go on to my exam tips. Okay, so what are my exam tips? We'll just remember how WAF works at its most basic level. It's going to allow 3 different types of behaviors. We're going to allow everything, we're going to block everything, or we're just going to monitor the number of requests that match the properties of which you specify. So if we're getting a new type of data coming in and we're not really sure whether or not it's something that we want to allow or block, we can just filter for that type of data and go in and count the requests. So WAF provides additional protection against web attacks using conditions that you specify. These conditions can be things like IP addresses that the request originates from, the country that the request comes from, values in your request headers, strings that appear in requests. So these could be query string parameters like what we saw earlier on. Things like the length of the request, presence of SQL code that's likely to be malicious, so SQL injection, and the same with cross-site scripting. And often they'll say what AWS service can help prevent SQL injection and cross-site scripting. That's going to be a web application firewall. A normal security group firewall is operating at level 4, so it doesn't peer into the into the request. It doesn't see what's happening at the application layer, whereas WAF is intelligent. It can go in and have a look at exactly what is happening at the application layer. That's why they're called layer 7 firewalls. Moving on, we've got application load balancers integrate with WAF at a regional level. Remember that CloudFront is at a global level, so you can associate your web application firewalls both with your application load balancers as well as with your CloudFront. But if you're doing it with the application load balancers, it has to be at a regional level. Currently, only a few regions are supported, around 4. I'm hoping that will change. It should be basically every region in the world, but we'll wait and see. I'm sure they're going to get there. You also need to associate your rules to your resources in order to be able to make it work. It wasn't enough that we just created our rules. We had to go in and actually associate this WAF to our AWS resources. So we went in and associated it to CloudFront. We can use WAF to protect websites not hosted on AWS, and the way we do this is we use CloudFront. Remember that CloudFront supports custom origins. So instead of using that S3 bucket, we could have a web server that's hosted in, on Azure, for example. And by that very mechanism, then we would be able to use the AWS WAF because it's integrating with CloudFront. We can block IPs. You can block IPs at a /8, /16, /24, or /32 level. So we blocked my individual IP address, which was at a /32 level. And of course, IP4 and IP6 are supported. And then just moving on to AWS Shield, I know we went over it really, really briefly. I don't want to spend $3,000 to be honest for a lab, but it is turned on by default. It's $3,000 a month if you want the advanced option. Advanced will give you things like incident response team, so you get access to them. You get a whole bunch of in-depth reporting, and you won't pay for the resources that it could cost you if you suffer from a DDoS attack. So do bear that in mind. We will cover DDoS towards in another section of the course where we'll do a couple of deep dives on a DDoS white paper. So that's it for this lecture, guys. In the next lecture, we're going to have a look at dedicated instances versus dedicated hosts. We're then going to go on and have a look at the actual architecture of EC2 hypervisors, and then we're ready to wrap up this section of the course. So you're almost at the end. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.